Sleep pulls at your thoughts like the tide pulls at the shore, gently, without hurry. The edges of your day begin to blur, noise softens, the weight of tasks and time loosens its grip. Your body nestles into stillness, and your breath becomes a steady rhythm, slow, deep, calm. As your eyelids grow heavy, you feel a widening above you. A sky not just overhead, but all around, vast and waiting. The stars blink into view like tiny lanterns strung across the dark, and you sense them not as distant ornaments, but as companions, each one a traveller sending light across the black sea of space just to greet you. Some of that starlight began its journey before your country was born, before any language you speak was spoken aloud. Some of it began even before Earth had leaves or flowers. These photons, these little pieces of light, have been moving through silence and time, only to land softly now. On your eye, on your cheek, on your wondering. There is something comforting in that. Something tender. The stars do not rush. They do not shout. They simply shine. And in doing so, they whisper. You lie still and listen. You listen not with ears, but with that part of you that remembers dreams. The constellations above, the hunter, the swan, the twin stars holding hands, they fade into something quieter. Not myth, but meaning. You don't need a hero tonight, you need a question. And it arrives like a ripple across still water. Could there be life beyond our world? For generations, we've looked toward the planets. Mars with its dry riverbeds and dust storms, Venus cloaked in a golden haze, Jupiter swirling with storms the size of Earth. We've imagined footsteps on alien ground, green skies filled with clouds not shaped like ours, but tonight, as your thoughts begin to float, another possibility rises into view. Not planets this time, but moons, smaller, colder, wrapped in silence and full of secrets. They circle their giant planets like quiet children around a bonfire. Jupiter and Saturn, Neptune and Uranus, all of them have moons, dozens upon dozens, each spinning softly in its own frozen ballet. Some are cratered and dry, but others pulse with mystery. Beneath their icy skins, some of these moons may hold entire oceans, vast global seas, not unlike our own, only hidden beneath shells of ice locked away in the dark. Europa, for instance, circles Jupiter like a pale pearl. Its surface is cracked and streaked, as if the moon has been tugged and twisted, pulled by the gravity of its giant parent. Scientists believe that beneath those icy scars lies a salty ocean, kept warm not by sunlight, but by motion. Gravity, stretching and squeezing the moon as it orbits, creates heat. Not a fire, not a flame, but a low, persistent warmth, enough to keep the water liquid beneath the crust. This process is called tidal heating. It is the same force that moves Earth's tides, but here it stirs the inside of a moon, like kneading warmth into cold hands. And Europa is not alone. Saturn's Enceladus, bright and tiny, is wrapped in white ice and known for something extraordinary. From its south pole, fountains of vapour burst into space, geysers of water and salt and organic molecules spraying into the void. We've flown spacecraft through those plumes, we've tasted the ocean's breath. Beneath Enceladus's frozen surface lies another ocean, deep and dark, and it too is warmed from within. Then there is Titan, Saturn's largest moon, and the only one with a thick atmosphere. Titan has lakes and rivers, but they're not filled with water. They ripple with methane and ethane, hydrocarbons that rain softly from orange skies. Yet even here, beneath its crust, may lie a sea of liquid water, quietly sloshing between layers of ice. These moons, and others like them, do not shout their presence. They do not blaze or roar. They wait, they turn, they whisper their secrets through gravity and ice and chemistry. And somewhere beneath those crusts, life, simple, alien, ancient, might slowly breathe. On Earth, Life exists in places we never expected, at the bottom of the sea, in boiling springs, in rock. Entire ecosystems thrive around hydrothermal vents, where sunlight never reaches, and organisms feed not on light but on chemical reactions. If life can thrive in Earth's deepest dark, why not in the oceans beneath Europa, or Enceladus, or Titan? Your mind floats there now, drifting like a probe, hovering near the cracked shell of Europa, or through the misty spray of Enceladus. You imagine an ocean black and still until somewhere maybe something stirs. Not a fish, not a monster. Maybe just a cell, splitting, surviving, becoming. It is enough. You return to yourself slowly like a feather settling. Your breath stills. Your skin warms against the blankets. And yet your thoughts continue outward, riding gentle arcs of wonder. These moons are not just rocks, they are possibilities. They remind you that life does not need sun, it needs warmth, water, time, and the right kind of quiet. The night deepens, and with it, your curiosity. You feel the pull of these distant moons, not just as destinations, but as questions. What is hidden beneath their stillness? What stories sleep inside their silence? And so, as you slip further into sleep, the stars lean in. The question remains open like a door left ajar. Could there be life out there, not on planets, but on the cradles of ice and shadow that orbit them? You drift now into deeper space, farther from the warmth of the sun. The light grows thin like breath on a cold mirror. Stars still sparkle above you, but the glow is gentler now, and shadows lengthen across the velvet dark. In this far-off region of the solar system, you find yourself among the giants, planets so massive they bend the paths of other worlds. Jupiter and Saturn loom large, not just in size but in gravity, in presence. Their clouds swirl endlessly, storms wider than Earth. Their rings glint faintly, sharp as whispers. But you're not here for the giants themselves. You've come for their quiet companions, the moons that circle them like forgotten children, spinning in soft orbit, holding secrets under skin made of ice. You let your mind settle on these small frozen worlds. At first glance they seem still, unmoving. Dead, perhaps. Cold and hard, coated in frost and cratered from time. But in their silence they keep watch. In their stillness they shelter motion. Around these massive planets, these moons are shaped by forces unseen, by gravity's slow tug, by ancient collisions, by the warmth that rises not from sunlight, but from within. You float gently toward them, passing between rings and shadows, and you begin to feel their rhythm, quiet but alive. Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, Enceladus, Titan. Their names like lullabies, soft and celestial. Each one is different, each one a cradle holding something unexpected. You pass first near Europa, the cracked moon of Jupiter. Its surface looks like shattered glass, grooved and ridged, frozen and fierce. But beneath those cracks, beneath the gleam of ice, lies an ocean vast and global. Scientists believe it may hold more water than all of Earth's oceans combined. Not in open sky, but beneath tens of kilometres of unbroken ice. An ocean not stirred by wind or weather, but by the deep kneading of tidal pull. Europa is not just a moon. It is a world within a world, its outer shell a cradle, its centre a sea. You move now toward Ganymede, the largest moon in the solar system, bigger even than Mercury. It carries with it a quiet strength, a kind of ancient presence. Ganymede is layered, like a story told in ice and stone, surface, ocean, rock, and within that structure lies a secret, a magnetic field, unique among moons, perhaps born of a moving core, or of salt water flowing in deep tides beneath the crust. You imagine it, an internal heartbeat, slow but steady, pulsing with the hum of planetary memory. Ganymede does not shout, it does not erupt like some moons, it simply turns, layered and thoughtful, holding its ocean in darkness. Callisto waits nearby, older still, worn and wise. Its face is mottled with scars and all, a tapestry of ancient impacts untouched by change. For a long time it was thought to be inert, cold to its core, but recent hints, magnetic whispers, subtle data, suggest a hidden ocean may still lie beneath, deep and slow and timeless? If so, it has been untouched for billions of years, a still sea beneath a silent crust. No churning heat, no rising plumes, just quiet depth, enduring. Callisto is a cradle, not of action, but of time, a record of what was, and perhaps what still is. And then you turn further still towards Saturn's realm. There, wrapped in icy brilliance, is Enceladus, tiny and bright, no bigger than a continent, but alive in ways we never expected. From its south pole, fountains of water erupt into space, cryovolcanoes breathing salt and organic molecules. Geysers stretch like threads of mist into the sky, and from orbit spacecraft have tasted them. Enceladus, once thought to be a frozen rock, now dances. Its ocean lies beneath only a few kilometers of crust, stirred by Saturn's pull, heated by internal friction. You imagine drifting through one of those plumes, water droplets touching your face, molecules formed in darkness brushing against your skin. Not far away, Titan hangs in golden haze. Thick with atmosphere, dense with clouds, it is both alien and familiar. Rivers snake across its surface, feeding into lakes and seas. But these are not made of water. They are made of methane and ethane, chilled to minus 180 degrees Celsius. Even so, under its crust there may be liquid water, warmed enough by internal heat to stay fluid, and methane, like water, is a solvent. Where liquid flows, chemistry follows. Titan is a cradle of complexity, not just of elements, but of possibility. What strange forms might arise here, in a world so different from Earth, yet shaped by similar hands? All these moons, and others still, hold water. Not puddles or glaciers, but vast oceans sealed away beneath their shells. The surfaces are bitterly cold, hundreds of degrees below freezing. Sunlight barely touches them, but beneath the ice the warmth persists, born of gravity, of friction, of decay. It is enough. And where there is warmth and water, life may follow. Not in cities or forests, but in tiny forms, in slow movements, in cells that divide in the dark, in molecules that dance with time. You pause now, floating among them. The silence is complete but not empty. It is full of potential. These moons do not call out, but they offer. They offer shelter. They offer mystery. They hold their oceans close, like secrets not yet shared. Cradles, each one, not of babies, not of memories, but of oceans that might remember the beginnings of life. You breathe in, long and slow. Your own body, mostly water, feels kin to these worlds. You're not so different, not so far. You too hold warmth within. You too have tides. And in this stillness, this orbit of thought, you begin to understand. These moons are not silent by accident. They are quiet because they are listening. And somewhere, deep within, something may be listening back. So rest now as the moons turn. Let your thoughts trace the cracks of Europa, the layers of Ganymede, the stillness of Callisto. Let them drift with the mist of Enceladus and the golden fog of Titan. For where silence lives, so might song, and where ice sleeps, so might oceans dream. Tomorrow you'll draw closer to one moon in particular, one with a face like broken glass and a heart that pulses with the tides of a hidden sea. You picture tiny organisms floating through Europa's dark ocean, cells, perhaps, or something more complex. Not fish, not familiar, but something adapted to the cold, the pressure, the silence. Life that moves without sight, life that listens through vibration, life that stirs in rhythm with Europa's tides. If such life exists, it has lived there for a long, quiet time, undisturbed, untouched. Europa hovers before you now, suspended in the quiet light of Jupiter's pull. It turns like a smooth pearl, pale, distant, gleaming. Around it the gas giant looms, swirling with storm bands and lightning that flashes through clouds like celestial breath. But Europa holds your attention. There is something different here. Not grand like Jupiter, not loud like Earth, but beautiful, delicate and fractured, as if the moon has cracked open under the weight of its own secrets. You drift nearer. The moon's skin is white and silver, etched with long dark lines. They run across its face like laughter lines on an old friend, curved, intersecting, circling the globe in loops and spirals. These are not impact scars, not the jagged marks of violence. They are fractures, ridges, signs of movement. The surface has split and shifted, slid and frozen again. It is not a still crust, but a shifting skin. Beneath it, something moves. The closer you float, the more it feels like Europa is breathing slowly through ice. The crust is thin in places, just kilometers deep. a fragile lid over something vast. Beneath that shell lies a global ocean stretching from pole to pole, pressing upward. It does not roar, it does not rise, but it pushes ever so gently, and the ice yields. The lines you see are the memory of that pressure. Cracks where the ice has pulled apart and refrozen. Places where water may have reached the surface and spilled into the vacuum before freezing instantly. Salt water, ancient and restless. Europa's ocean is not still, it is stirred from within. Jupiter's gravity tugs at Europa constantly, pulling it slightly out of shape with every orbit. The moon flexes and relaxes, bends and straightens. This kneading, called tidal flexing, generates heat deep inside, enough to keep the ocean liquid, even so far from the sun. It's as if the moon's very bones are being massaged by an invisible hand. That warmth seeps through the rock and ice, melting the water, maintaining a world of motion beneath a world of frost. You imagine drifting below the surface, diving under the shell of ice. At first it's dark, a darkness untouched by sunlight, untouched by time. But then, as you descend, you feel the subtle hum of movement. The ocean is there, vast and black and alive with potential. It laps against the ice ceiling above, ripples across an unseen floor of stone. Maybe there are vents down there, places where the rock breathes warmth into the water. Hydrothermal vents, like those in Earth's deep sea, where life clings to mineral towers, feeding not on light but on chemistry. Back at the surface you notice reddish stains along the cracks, discolorations that puzzle scientists to this day. They may be salts carried up from the ocean below, stained by the chemistry of that hidden world. Or they could be more, organic compounds, ingredients of life. No one knows for sure. But Europa writes its stories in these lines. The moon keeps nothing on its surface for long. Crust is born, split, recycled. It erases its scars over time like a body healing itself. And yet these reddish marks remain, like whispers of something deeper. Jupiter dominates the sky above. Its gravity is both protector and tormentor, shielding Europa from stray asteroids while pulling and twisting its very form. The radiation from Jupiter is intense, sweeping across Europa's surface like an invisible wind. No human could stand here unprotected, but beneath the ice, below the radiation, life could be shielded, safe. The ocean is a refuge, a blanket, a cradle. Your thoughts drift to Earth again. In our own oceans, deep below the surface, creatures live in perpetual dark near volcanic vents where minerals bubble up and bacteria thrive. Tube worms, ghostly white anchored in columns of stone, shrimp without eyes, entire ecosystems where sunlight never penetrates, but life abounds. If it can happen here, why not there? Europa is cold, yes. Silent, yes. But it is not dead. It turns, it shifts, it hides something immense. When spacecraft have flown past, like Galileo, like Voyager, they captured images of this fractured world. Soon, more missions will come. The Europa Clipper, built to orbit and study this moon in detail, will arrive within the next decade. It will scan the ice, sniff the atmosphere, listen to the ocean with radar that sees through frost. It may fly through plumes if they erupt, jets of water spraying skyward from cracks as they do on Enceladus. You imagine that moment, a spacecraft tasting the breath of Europa's ocean, searching for signs, for salt, for heat, for life. All without landing, just by listening carefully to what the moon exhales. Even a whisper from that deep sea could be enough. A hint, a clue, a beginning. You close your eyes. You picture yourself beneath Europa's shell, floating through endless black, your body wrapped in warmth, your mind at ease. Above you, the ice pulses gently, like a slow heartbeat. Below, the seafloor murmurs with chemical dreams. You're not alone. Not in this thought, not in this place. Europa turns on. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, faithfully, like a lullaby whispered by gravity itself. It is a moon cracked open by tension, by time, by tides, and what lies beneath is not just water, but a question. The kind of question that feels less like science and more like wonder. You begin to drift again, your thoughts softened by all that you've seen. Europa fades behind you, but its rhythm stays, a slow beat, a subtle pulse. You're being drawn onward now, to the deeper question behind all this warmth. How is it that ice-covered moons far from the sun can remain warm at all? What hidden fire fuels the oceans of these distant worlds? You drift now beneath the crust. The stars above are gone, replaced by thick, ancient ice stretching overhead like a frozen sky. It arches above you, unbroken, a cathedral of silence. There is no light here. The sun is far away, and even its memory does not reach this deep. Yet something unexpected touches your skin, not cold, but warmth. Faint, steady, pulsing. You pause, suspended in the dark, and feel the subtle breath of a hidden world. Where does this warmth come from? You're far from any star. There are no volcanoes here, no campfires, no golden rays falling through clouds, and yet beneath the surface of moons like Europa and Enceladus, warmth rises from below, keeping the oceans liquid, moving, alive. The answer lies not in fire, but in motion, in gravity's quiet power, stretching and squeezing these frozen worlds in a rhythm older than memory. Imagine a ball of dough in your hands. As you knead it, push and pull, it warms. Energy becomes heat. In space, gravity does the kneading. As these moons orbit their giant planets, Jupiter, Saturn, they do not move in perfect circles. Their paths are slightly elliptical, and with each orbit their distance from the planet changes. As they draw closer, the gravitational pull strengthens, stretching the moon outward. As they move away, it eases. Over and over the moon is flexed. The ice, the rock, the deep internal layers, and all squeezed like soft clay. This gentle torment creates friction, and friction becomes heat. This process is called tidal heating. You imagine Europa turning slowly in its orbit, its core flexing ever so slightly with each pass around Jupiter. Beneath its icy shell, the rock grinds against itself, pressed and pulled, and that motion releases warmth. Enough warmth, in fact, to melt ice. Not on the surface, but far below, where pressure is high and temperature, though low by Earth's standards, is just warm enough to keep salt water from freezing. Over time, this warmth forms and sustains a liquid ocean. Not a pool, not a pond. An ocean, deep, dark and global, and Europa is not alone. Enceladus, Saturn's glittering moon, experiences a similar dance. It is smaller, but its orbit brings it close enough to Saturn, and the tidal pull is strong enough that heat is created beneath its crust. That heat collects in the south polar region, where the ice is thinnest, and escapes through fractures called tiger stripes. There, water escapes in plumes, jets of vapour that shoot into space like sighs, revealing the ocean beneath. Even tiny moons, if placed just right, can contain this secret fire. You float deeper into the thought. It comforts you, this idea, that heat can come not only from burning but from being moved. That motion alone can warm a world, and that warmth, in turn, can cradle life. These moons are frozen on the outside, but within they are dynamic. They move, they shift, they creak. The oceans press gently against their icy ceilings. Cracks form and close, surfaces shift like puzzle pieces, all of it powered not by the sun but by tides. Back on Earth, tides shape our seas, moving them in slow rhythms. But here, tides do more than move water. They generate heat, and that heat in turn creates conditions for life. Not life as we know it, not sunlit, not green, but life that begins in dark warmth, in chemical reactions deep beneath the crust. You recall the hydrothermal vents of Earth, those chimneys of stone that rise from the ocean floor, spewing mineral-rich water heated by the planet's core. Around them, entire ecosystems flourish. Worms, clams, bacteria, all thriving without sunlight. Could such vents exist on Europa, Enceladus, or Ganymede? Could tidal heating create enough energy to power not just an ocean, but a community of life? The possibility feels real now. Not fantasy, but physics. Tidal heating may be the engine behind it all. It is not dramatic. It does not burst or flame. It hums, it pulses. It is the slow drumbeat beneath these moons, keeping them warm, keeping them moving. Over millions of years it may have carved channels through rock, softened layers of ice, melted what would otherwise be frozen. In some places, it may even have created pockets of warmth near the crust, shallow lakes that rise and fall, trapped between the surface and the sea. You imagine being there, lying on the underside of the ice, hearing the groan of shifting plates above, feeling the sigh of warm water below. A world turned inward, and yet full of motion. Even as you rest here, in the dark of thought, you sense the constant energy of this invisible dance. Jupiter pulls, Saturn stretches, moons respond. It is a silent symphony, written in gravity and time. No conductor, no applause, just orbits, shifting over eons, creating heat where none should be. And heat, in turn, creates hope. The idea that warmth could exist in such distant places opens the door to possibility. Life does not need a surface, or an atmosphere, or even a sky. It needs chemistry, it needs a liquid, and it needs energy. Tidal heating provides that energy, steady, slow, dependable. A furnace made not of fire but of force. You begin to see these moons differently now, not as cold rocks, but as living systems, each with its own internal rhythm. They creak and flex, stretch and groan, and somewhere in that movement they breathe. Not air, but heat, and perhaps eventually life. You feel yourself drawn to that idea, that even in the coldest places warmth can find a way to rise, that even in the absence of sunlight something can stir, not loudly, not quickly, but inevitably. The warmth beneath the ice is not an accident, it is a feature, a quiet promise, wrapped in layers of silence. You breathe out slowly, your own body held by gravity, warmed by a distant star, moved by a world you've never touched. The moons continue to turn, their oceans continue to press, and the tides continue to pull. You're not done dreaming. One moon now calls to you louder than the rest, not because of size or brightness, but because of a steady hum, a whisper of layers and motion. It is the only moon with its own magnetic field. It is vast, complex, and full of quiet harmony. Ganymede. Ganymede rises before you like a world unto itself, vast, banded in ice and shadow, turning slowly beneath the weightless hush of space. It is not merely a moon, it is the largest moon in the solar system, larger even than the planet Mercury, but it does not boast. It does not flash with colour or shine with jets. Instead, it turns with quiet confidence, wrapped in layers that seem to hum with memory. You glide toward its surface, floating above wide plains streaked with frozen scars. Ridges crisscross the landscape like ancient veins, some bright and young, others worn and dark. It is a surface both active and old, reshaped and remembered, a record of deep time. Beneath your gaze, Ganymede stretches in stillness, but within it stirs. This moon has structure. It is not just ice and rock, it is layered, as if composed like a symphony, each part playing in harmony with the others. At the top, a crust of water ice, brittle and frozen. Beneath that, a salty ocean, vast and subsurface, cradled between shells of ice. And beneath the ocean lies a mantle of rock, pressed and heavy. Deeper still, an iron-rich core thought to churn slowly, endlessly. This churning is more than mechanical. It gives Ganymede a unique voice in the solar system, a soft, magnetic whisper. You don't hear it, not in the way you hear wind or music, but you feel it. The presence of a magnetic field wrapped gently around the moon like a soft pulse. Of all the moons that orbit Jupiter, only Ganymede has one of its own, not borrowed, not reflected, but born from deep within. This magnetic field moves through space like a murmur, a sign that something inside is alive with motion. It is this internal motion, the slow turning of liquid metal or perhaps salt water layers, that creates the field. Earth does the same, with a molten core that generates a protective shield around the planet. Ganymede, cold on the outside, still turns warm at its center, and that warmth, that movement, sends its signal outward. It is faint but constant, like the rhythm of a distant drum. You drift lower now, following the lines carved into Ganymede's surface. Some are grooves hundreds of kilometers long. Others are ripples and fractures where ice has split and shifted. They tell stories of expansion, of tension and release, signs that the moon's crust has moved, has opened and sealed again. You imagine how pressure builds from below as the ocean pulses and presses upward. Sometimes the surface yields. Sometimes the story breaks through. Ganymede's ridges are not just markings, they're echoes of the moon's internal heartbeat. As you travel across this frozen world, you think of the forces at work below. Tidal heating plays a part, but not as strongly here as on Europa. Ganymede's distance from Jupiter means less flexing, less internal friction. And yet, the ocean remains. Perhaps it is preserved by other heat sources, the decay of radioactive elements in the core, or the remnant warmth of a world still cooling after billions of years. Whatever the source, the warmth persists and the ocean endures. That ocean is buried deep, perhaps more than 100 kilometers beneath the ice. Scientists believe it is layered, with possible pockets of liquid trapped between sheets of different ice phases, like pages in a frozen book. The pressure there is immense, the light is none, yet the possibility of life remains, because wherever water lingers and energy flows, the potential exists. Perhaps the ocean brushes against rock, and in that touch minerals dissolve and mix, creating fuel for simple life. Perhaps chemical gradients, tiny differences in salt and heat, become the first steps in metabolism. You imagine something small, something slow, drifting into the heavy dark, moving not by instinct but by chemistry, existing not to thrive but simply to be. Ganymede, though massive, is not dramatic. It does not spout plumes like Enceladus. It does not shimmer with a cracked skin like Europa. It holds its secrets close, deep and slow, like a creature curled in sleep. And yet, its magnetic field gives it away. A signal that says, I am not still, I am not silent. You begin to understand that life may not always bloom in fireworks. Sometimes it waits in the deep. It pulses gently, like a hidden heart. Looking out from above, you take in the scale of this moon. Craters mark the older regions, while ridged terrains stretch like wrinkles in ice. The bright bands cut across the dark, suggesting episodes of change, cycles of freezing, cracking, flooding, and freezing again. The surface tells you that Ganymede is not a dead rock. It is dynamic, evolving, listening. The moon's thin atmosphere is made mostly of oxygen, though far too faint to breathe. Still, its presence hints at ongoing processes, sublimation, sputtering, the slow release of gases from the ice below. Even the exosphere, that ghost of an atmosphere, speaks to a world that is not entirely closed. You wonder what it would feel like to stand here, to place your hand on the ice and feel, through glove or dream, the distant warmth beneath. Would you feel the rhythm of the core? Would the surface tremble with tides? Would you sense, even faintly, that beneath you, water laps against ice, and minerals swirl in darkness? You close your eyes. For a moment, your heartbeat aligns with the imagined one of Ganymede. Two rhythms, one flesh and one frozen, but both shaped by gravity and time. It feels quiet. It feels old. It feels true. There is a reason we listen to the moons, not just because they orbit the planets we admire, but because they tell us something deeper about where life might thrive. They challenge what we thought we knew, that only the sun gives warmth, that only air gives breath, that only earth gives life. Ganymede holds a different truth, a more patient one. As you prepare to drift onward, you sense the pull of another moon, one even older in surface, one more heavily cratered, more still, and yet, perhaps, just as secretive beneath. It is Callisto, farthest of Jupiter's major moons, long thought to be inert, but perhaps not. Perhaps it too remembers the ocean. Perhaps silence does not mean emptiness. Perhaps stillness hides the deepest songs of all. You drift outward again, farther from Jupiter's magnetic embrace. The light fades slowly, dimming into a grey hush as another moon rises before you, larger than the moon, older than any of its siblings, and far more silent. This is Callisto, the outermost of Jupiter's great moons, wrapped not in brightness or drama, but in quiet age. It does not call to you like Europa, nor pulse with the magnetic hum of Ganymede. Callisto waits. That is its way. Its face is the oldest, most cratered surface in the solar system, a canvas of ancient scars, each a story of impact frozen in time. You move gently over this battered land, tracing the rims of ancient craters, their edges softened by eons of stillness. There are no signs of recent change, no smooth plains or ridges of youth. Everything here is old, as if time itself has slowed. The silence feels heavier, deeper, more complete. And yet, beneath that stillness, something unknown may endure. Scientists once thought Callisto to be geologically dead, too far from Jupiter for tidal heating to warm its interior, too static to change. But then came the whispers, a gentle magnetic nudge, a shift in measurements. The Galileo spacecraft passed nearby and sensed something, a subtle response in the magnetic field, as if Callisto was conducting faintly from within. And to conduct, there must be something that flows, an ocean. You hover above the icy crust, a vast shield perhaps 150 kilometers thick. Beneath it, models suggest, lies a salty sea, Not boiling or shifting like the oceans of Europa, but slow, dark, undisturbed. A buried reservoir older than Earth's oceans, perhaps untouched since the birth of the solar system. If it exists, it has endured in silence for 4 billion years, unfrozen by some hidden combination of pressure, salt, and ancient heat. You close your eyes and imagine it, a world beneath a world. No sunlight has ever reached this sea, no cracks in the ice to bring in air, just darkness, pressure, and a timeless, patient stillness. It is easy to think of Callisto as lifeless, but what if life doesn't need change? What if it simply needs time? On Earth, the deepest parts of the ocean remain unexplored, yet they are alive with organisms adapted to pressure and silence. Could similar life sleep here, suspended in the deep cold of Callisto's sea? Not rushing, not evolving, just persisting, enduring. Callisto's age offers something profound, a kind of cosmic memory. Its surface has preserved 1 billion years of impacts, unaltered by geology or atmosphere. Here you can see the timeline of the solar system written in ice and stone, crater upon crater, some overlapping like fingerprints left in ancient dust. The Great Basin of Valhalla stretches outward in concentric ripples, the remnants of a cataclysm so powerful it shaped the moon's crust for thousands of kilometers in every direction. But beneath even that scar, the ocean may remain unshaken, protected, deep. There is a kind of reverence that comes with standing near something so old. Callisto does not seek attention. It does not reveal itself easily, and yet its very refusal to change becomes its story. In its silence, it invites you to listen differently, to feel rather than hear, to sense the weight of time, the gravity of a body that has waited without motion, yet never without meaning. You float now through the thin exosphere, the ghostly wisp of gas that lingers near the surface. It is made mostly of carbon dioxide with faint traces of oxygen, but too thin to breathe, too gentle to feel. But it speaks of ongoing exchange. Molecules are knocked free from the surface by radiation or micrometeoroids, then drawn back again. A slow cycle, a breath every 1,000 years. Even here, in this stillness, there is rhythm. Beneath your thoughts, something stirs. Not from Callisto, but from within yourself. A feeling of quiet awe. The kind that settles not in the mind, but in the chest. You begin to wonder what it means for an ocean to be forgotten. Not because it was lost, but because it chose not to speak. Could life here be similarly silent? Not absent, but unobserved? Could it be that waiting is also a form of living? The more you think of it, the more you realize that change is not always a sign of life. Sometimes survival lies in constancy, in remaining, in enduring every impact, every collision, and still holding warmth inside. Callisto is a moon of endurance. It carries the past not as a burden, but as a blanket. Some scientists dream of drilling through its crust, sending a probe to melt down through the ice to listen and sample the sea beneath. But that moment is far off. For now, all we can do is listen, through magnetic whispers, through gravitational hints, through the language of ice. And you are listening now, with more than ears. You begin to feel the subtle tension between knowing and not knowing run down. The edge of mystery where science meets wonder. The ocean beneath Callisto may never breach its surface, may never erupt into space or stain the ice above. But that does not make it less real. Its silence may be its strength. It may be a world that never forgot how to keep a secret. As you prepare to leave, you take one last look at the surface. Pocked, weathered, patient. You imagine that beneath your gaze, somewhere in the deep, a single molecule dances. Maybe it divides. Maybe it drifts. Maybe it waits. The stars above seem dimmer here, as if softened by age. And the silence becomes a presence, thick and full. You float away slowly, carrying the weight of Callisto's long memory with you, a quiet echo of time preserved. Another moon waits now, not in Jupiter's domain, but around Saturn. Much smaller, much brighter, and far more surprising. It does not wait in silence. It dances. It sings. It sprays its ocean into space like a poem written in mist. You drift now to Saturn, the jewel of the solar system, ringed in golden haze and shadowed bands. Around this majestic planet spin dozens of moons, strange, icy, silent companions, and among them, one calls to you with a voice unlike any other. It is not the biggest, it is not the brightest, but it sings. Enceladus. Tiny, brilliant, and alive in a way that surprises even the most seasoned minds. This moon is only 500 kilometers across, small enough to fit within the boundaries of a great terrestrial desert. Yet its heart beats with liquid heat and its breath hangs in the air. From a distance, Enceladus glows white, almost impossibly so. Its surface is smooth and reflective, casting sunlight back like freshly fallen snow. But it is what emerges from within that captures your thoughts. Near its south pole, something extraordinary happens. There, in that cold and silent place, the crust cracks open and lets the ocean speak. You approach gently, pulled by the magnetic grace of curiosity. Below you, the tiger stripes stretch across the ice, long parallel fractures etched into the moon's skin. And from them rise plumes, enormous jets of water vapour, ice particles and organic molecules that burst into the vacuum of space like frozen geysers. They reach hundreds of kilometres high, forming a halo of mist around the moon. It is a fountain not of fire, but of frost. You float through one now, slowly, like a feather drifting through fog. The plume surrounds you, delicate, crystalline, quiet. Salt clings to your senses, along with traces of ammonia, silica, and simple organic compounds. Each droplet is a message from beneath, a piece of an ocean that no longer hides. You taste the sea, feel its touch on your skin, and know that this is no illusion. The water is real. The warmth is real. Something below is moving, pushing, breathing. This moon weeps into the stars. You descend toward the South Pole where the ice is thinnest, and feel the rumble beneath the tiger stripes. A deep, slow pulse, like pressure building from within. The cracks are not mere scars. They are vents, breathing holes. Through them, the moon releases what it cannot contain. But how does such a tiny world keep itself warm? Enceladus orbits close to Saturn, caught in a gravitational rhythm with other moons. This resonance stretches and squeezes its interior, a process known now to you, tidal heating. Even a small moon, if needed in just the right way, can generate heat at its core, enough to melt ice, enough to sustain an ocean, enough to fuel the dance of plumes that burst into the night. Beneath the crust, scientists believe, lies a global ocean, salty, liquid, warmed from below. Not a pond, not a lake, but a deep and active sea that rests atop a rocky floor. The interaction between rock and water may drive chemical reactions, and those reactions, as on Earth, could be the spark for life. You picture the ocean floor, dark, unseen, but teeming with possibility. Perhaps there are hydrothermal vents there, like chimneys rising from the stone, releasing heat and minerals into the water. Perhaps simple organisms gather near them, feeding on gradients, drifting slowly, forming the base of a silent ecosystem. It is not fantasy, it is not fiction, it is a hypothesis built on evidence, real, tested, and alive with hope. The Cassini spacecraft once flew through these plumes. Again and again it passed close to Enceladus, gathering data, tasting the mist, confirming the presence of water and organics. With no drill, no landing, no descent, it read the moon's breath, and what it found changed our understanding forever. This little world, long overlooked, became a prime candidate in the search for life beyond Earth. You hover now, just above the South Pole, and look across a land sculpted by frost and fracture. Ridges curve around impact scars. Valleys sink where ice has shifted. It is a surface that changes. Not quickly, not with fire, but with patience. Ice slides, pressure builds, the sea below moves gently, pressing upward, looking for places to speak. You close your eyes and listen. The silence is not empty. Beneath your thoughts is a rhythm, a subtle breathing of vapour and sea. The moon dances, not wildly but in pulses. It opens and exhales. It pauses and sighs, a cryovolcanic dancer, not of magma but of water, releasing warmth through tears. You wonder what it would be like to dive into that ocean, to slip beneath the cracks into the deep black below. Would it feel like coming home? Would the darkness press against your skin or hold you like a cradle? What creatures, if any, might move there? Slow, blind, ancient. What stories might they carry in their quiet movements? Enceladus does not answer, but it does not hide. Its plumes are a promise, a chance to reach without drilling, to learn without touching. Even now, those jets continue, feeding the E-ring of Saturn, spraying mist into the sky. The moon is small, but it gives. It offers its water, its secrets, its warmth, a gift from below the crust. And you, floating through its icy breath, feel the wonder of that gift. A tiny moon dancing with gravity, singing with vapor, hiding an ocean beneath a smooth, snowy shell. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, but it is alive. Geologically, chemically, and perhaps biologically. You drift back, letting the plume fall away like morning mist. The stars return. The dark is deeper now, but it no longer feels cold. You have felt the warmth that hides beneath. You have touched the breath of a moon. Soon, you will travel to another moon, one shrouded not in ice but in cloud. It is larger, heavier, more complex. A world of methane lakes and thick golden skies. It does not erupt or shimmer. It dreams in vapor, and it too may hold an ocean buried far below. Titan. And Cassini found this not by accident, but by devotion. By flying again and again through those plumes, at great risk, through freezing clouds of ice and gas. It returned tireless until its instruments wore thin and its fuel ran low, and still it flew, guided by curiosity, driven by wonder. You remember now how it ended. In 2017, with its fuel nearly gone, Cassini began its final descent, a graceful dive between Saturn and its innermost rings, threading the narrow space like a needle through a hem of gold. It completed 22 such orbits, gathering final data, peering into Saturn's heart, and then, on September 15th, it fell. It did not crash. It did not burn in fire. It was guided purposefully into Saturn's atmosphere, where it was torn apart molecule by molecule, disappearing into the clouds it had studied for so long. This was not tragedy. It was kindness. Cassini was destroyed to protect Enceladus, to ensure that no earthly microbes clinging to its body would ever touch that sacred ocean. Even in death, it gave. You imagine that final moment, falling through Saturn's sky, its instruments still transmitting, its sensors still tasting. Until the very end it spoke, it listened, it wondered, it whispered goodbye. The data it returned still echoes. Scientists continue to study it, to search through it, to ask new questions it left behind. What more was in the plume? Could complex molecules be formed there? Could microbes deep below leave traces in the mist? Cassini didn't answer all these questions, but it gave us the tools to ask them better, and more than that, it showed us a path. Its journey was a lullaby of patience, of courage, of reaching not for the nearest target but for the most meaningful. It turned our gaze from planets to moons, from surfaces to oceans, from silence to whispers. It showed us that even the smallest worlds may carry the largest truths. Now, as you drift above Enceladus, and the mist brushes past you like a cold breath, you feel Cassini's presence, not in the air, not in the ice, but in the way you look. You're more attentive now. You know that plumes are not just eruptions, but messages. That a geyser is not chaos, but conversation. Cassini gave us more than knowledge. It gave us a way of seeing. You breathe deeply in this imagined place, letting the silence fill you. Above, Saturn looms, massive, golden, endlessly circling. Below, Enceladus dances, and in between, the empty path once carved by a spacecraft's courage. There are other missions coming, new ships, new eyes. The Europa Clipper, JUICE, more instruments, sharper sensors. But Cassini was first. It was the one that dared to fly into the spray, to taste the impossible, to carry the kiss of Enceladus back to Earth. You close your eyes. You imagine the long arc of its life, from launchpad to rings, from camera to data stream. You feel the hush of its final breath, and you know some gifts are quiet, some voices end in silence, but their echoes do not fade. You float now, weightless, full of memory, and ahead waits a different moon, larger, hazier, wrapped in thick atmosphere. Titan, a world of orange skies and methane rain, a place where rivers run without water, and lakes mirror not clouds but alien vapours. Cassini went there too, dropped a lander into its haze, sent back pictures from the surface. That too was a gift. In the stillness of space, where sound cannot travel and silence reigns, a voice once whispered, not through words but through data, images and graceful arcs through Saturn's shadows. That voice belonged to a spacecraft named Cassini, and it sang for over 13 years from Saturn's side. Now, as you drift through the soft glow of Saturn's rings and glance once more at the frozen plume of Enceladus. You remember that voice and the song it left behind. Cassini was not just a machine, it was a dream set into motion, a slender silver body with golden panels, a mind of instruments, a heart full of questions. Launched in 1997, it travelled for nearly 7 years to reach Saturn, and once there, it stayed. Not to merely orbit and observe, but to listen, to learn, and to touch what had never been touched. Its mission was grand, to study Saturn, its rings, its moons, a dance of motion and mystery. But no one knew, not then, that its most profound discoveries would come from something so small, so overlooked, a little moon named Enceladus. Cassini found beauty everywhere, in the banded storms of Saturn, in the arcs of ring particles that shimmered like glass, in the thick haze of Titan, in the glow of auroras circling the planet's poles. It circled, it dove, it watched. But something strange called from Enceladus, a glint, a shimmer, a spray of mist from the moon's south pole that pulsed like breath. The spacecraft turned toward it, not knowing that this would be its most intimate encounter. It flew low, over and again, through the plumes that burst from Enceladus's icy crust. These were not gentle passes. Cassini flew through the heart of the geysers, diving into the mist, tasting the contents of the spray with its sensors. And what it found changed everything. Salt, water vapour, simple organic molecules, tiny grains of silica suggesting warm hydrothermal interactions, ammonia and methane, the building blocks of life. Not life itself, but ingredients. Recipes written in vapour, the breath of an ocean hidden under ice. Cassini became our eyes and tongue in a place no human could go. It read the chemical language of Enceladus's size and brought their meaning home. The implication was extraordinary. There was not just water beneath the crust, but warm, salty water. Water that had touched rock. Water rich in molecules that, on Earth, are woven into life. You arrive now at Titan, Saturn's largest moon, and the second largest moon in the solar system. It floats before you like a sealed letter wrapped in golden fog. The sunlight here is weak, diffused, filtered through an atmosphere thick and opaque. You can't see the surface with your eyes. Titan keeps its secrets well, but there's something in its stillness, something in its shrouded light that invites you to look closer, not for what you recognize, but for what might be. Unlike the other moons you've visited, Titan has an atmosphere, and not a thin one. It's dense, heavier than Earth's, pressing down with a quiet hush. It's made mostly of nitrogen, like the air you breathe, but laced with methane and other hydrocarbons. And it's cold, far colder than any place you've known, around 180 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, water is not liquid but rock. Ice is not fragile but strong, sculpted into mountains and plains. Yet here, on this frozen world, something astonishing happens. Titan has lakes, not of water, but of methane and ethane, hydrocarbons that are gases on Earth, but at Titan's cold temperatures settle into liquid form. These lakes and seas ripple softly in Titan's polar regions, especially in the north, where the largest sea, Kraken Mare, stretches over hundreds of kilometres, black and mirror-like, reflecting an alien sky. Rivers feed into these basins, winding across the landscape like delicate etchings. Rain falls here too, not of water but of methane. Titan has a hydrological cycle, not Earth's, but its own. A dreamlike mirror of what we know, you descend slowly through Titan's atmosphere, surrounded by orange mist. Sunlight filters through the haze in soft, diluted rays. It is not bright, but it is gentle. You pass through layers of cloud, drifting as if through a dream. The air thickens, your descent slows, and then, below you, the outline of the surface begins to take shape. It is unlike anything you've seen. The land is smooth in some places, jagged in others. Vast dunes stretch across the equator, built not from sand but from grains of complex hydrocarbons, soot-like particles that drift down from the sky and gather in long, wind-sculpted lines. Between the dunes, rivers snake and branch, though many are dry. They tell stories of rains that come rarely but reshape the land when they do. You land near a small lake, dark, still, unmoving. It is bordered by cliffs of frozen water ice, worn smooth by time. The air smells faintly of chemicals, not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. You kneel at the edge of the lake and dip your fingers into the methane. It is thin, oily, cold beyond imagining. And yet it moves, it ripples, it reflects. This is a world where life would look nothing like us. You wonder, if life exists here, what form might it take? Without liquid water, without warmth, without oxygen, could anything live? And yet some scientists believe it's possible. Not in spite of Titan's strangeness, but because of it. Perhaps in the lakes, in the moist sand, or beneath the crust, there are molecules forming, reacting, dancing in slow, deliberate rhythms. Life based not on carbon and water, but on methane and exotic chemistry. Alien life, hypothetical life, but not impossible. Beneath your feet, Titan hides another surprise, a subsurface ocean, one of water, deep below the icy crust. Protected from the cold of space, warmed slightly by the decay of radioactive elements and the gentle pull of Saturn's gravity. This ocean may be global, stretching below the surface in a vast, dark sea. And if warmth and water and chemistry come together, as they have on other moons, then perhaps life is not a question of if, but how. Cassini visited Titan many times, and once it dropped a lander, Huygens, that descended through the clouds and touched the surface. It sent back photographs of rounded stones, of a sky turned gold, of a flat pebbled plain. It lasted only minutes, but in that time it touched another world. It confirmed what we imagined. Titan is real, solid, surprising. A moon that feels less like a satellite and more like a planet in its own right. You rise into the air again, floating above the dunes and rivers, over the polar lakes. You trace the paths of methane storms, the channels where runoff once carved. You watch Titan breathe its slow, thick breath. Haze rising, haze falling. This is a world of reflection, not just in its mirrored lakes, but in its meaning. It shows you a version of Earth that might have been, or might still be elsewhere. Life here would be slow, cold, subtle. It might build membranes from exotic molecules, fuel itself through reactions unfamiliar to us. It might move without motion. It might sleep for centuries, then wake at the touch of warmth or light. You feel not fear in this thought, but wonder. Life does not need to be like us to be real. It only needs to be. You drift once more into the upper atmosphere, where the haze glows softly with scattered light. The golden mist surrounds you, muffling sound, softening thought. You feel suspended, not just in space, but in a place between knowing and not knowing. Titan does not answer questions, it suggests them. It invites you to look, to imagine, to ask again. And above, Saturn spins in silent orbit, its rings casting shadows across the moon's surface. The cycle continues, of weather, of orbits, of dreams. Titan does not break the pattern, it becomes part of it. You leave the haze behind, slowly rising toward the stars. The air thins, the darkness deepens, but you carry something with you. Not a discovery, but a possibility. A new way of thinking. A reminder that the conditions for life are not limited to warmth and sun. They may bloom in cold, in mist, in lakes made not of water, but of methane. You turn now toward the larger question. What do these moons share, across their differences? What makes their oceans, however hidden, however strange, feel familiar? Beneath ice, beneath haze, beneath distance, what patterns echo the oceans of Earth? Maybe the story of life is not rare. Maybe it's a song that water remembers how to sing again and again, wherever the conditions are right. Maybe oceans, even those trapped beneath ice, are the instruments of that song. You think of the ingredients: carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, the knops of life. These elements are not rare. They float in space, they fall in comets, they drift in gas clouds, and they're found in the moons you've visited. Cassini tasted them in Enceladus's spray. Galileo glimpsed them in Europa's cracks. They are waiting, scattered like seeds. Time, too, is plentiful. The moons are old. Their oceans have existed for hundreds of millions, perhaps billions, of years. Time enough for molecules to bond, to twist into spirals, to wrap into membranes. Time enough for the slow alchemy of chemistry to become biology. You pause in this thought, letting it wash over you like a gentle wave. The oceans of these moons are different. Colder, darker, hidden. But their patterns are not alien. They are echoes. Familiar shapes in unfamiliar forms. Fractures that resemble Earth's sea ice. Plumes that mimic geysers. Salts that match the chemistry of life. There is a rhythm to it all, a repetition, a quiet persistence. You float between moons in your mind, linking them not by orbit but by essence, each one a chamber, each one a vessel, and within each the potential for motion, heat, and life. You begin to feel the vastness of it, not as emptiness, but as opportunity. The solar system is not a desert. It is an archipelago of oceans. Your thoughts return to Earth. How rare we believed life to be. How precious. And it is. But perhaps not because it is alone. Perhaps it is precious because it is common. Because it is what happens when water and warmth meet. Because it is a pattern the universe writes, over and over in the hidden ink of the dark. You consider the next steps. Missions are being planned. Robots will return to Europa, to Enceladus. They will measure, drill, dive. Instruments will seek the signature of life. Organic molecules, metabolic gases, even microscopic forms. And perhaps one day they will find them. But for now, you simply imagine. Imagine a bubble of methane rising from a vent on Titan, a swirl of salt in the Sea of Ganymede, a warm grain of rock brushing the ice of Callisto. You picture microbes drifting through it all, unaware of the stars above, writing their own quiet languages in molecular form. And you remember that life does not always need light. Sometimes it only needs a place to begin, a shelter, a rhythm, a pause long enough to breathe. The oceans beneath the ice are not just places. They are poems. They are waiting rooms. They are the deep breath before the first whisper. And as you float between them, wrapped in the silence of possibility, you begin to sense that even here, in the farthest reaches, you are not alone. Another question rises now, softer, slower, like a tide pulling back. What is it about water that makes it such a perfect cradle? What is its language? And what, if anything, is it trying to say? Water does not speak in syllables, but it speaks. Not in sentences, but in movement. A language written in currents, in droplets, in the soft erosion of time. You know this language already, though you may not always notice it. You've seen how water shapes a stone with patience, how it carries mountains into sand. On Earth, it dances in rivers and crashes in waves. But on the moons you visited, it speaks more quietly. Still, it speaks. You float now in this understanding, weightless among icy worlds, listening for that quiet voice. Beneath Europa's cracked shell, water moves unseen. It presses gently on the ice above, flows along hidden currents, laps against a crust that bends in response. Beneath Enceladus, water escapes in vaporous sighs, telling stories of warmth and salt and motion. Beneath Titan, it sleeps deeper still, held tight by frozen layers, but still it waits, ready to respond when the planet shifts its breath. Even on Callisto, quiet and forgotten, the hint of an ocean lies buried deep and still, and through them all, through every hidden sea, water is not silent. It whispers, it remembers. You recall how on Earth water holds memory. It carves canyons over millennia. It leaves behind traces, minerals, patterns, deltas, scars. Water is not passive. It chooses its path not with intention but with patience. It does not rush. It flows. And in that flowing it transforms everything it touches. On the icy moons, water wears new disguises. It is not always free. Sometimes it is trapped, sealed beneath kilometers of ice. Sometimes it is pressurized, squeezed into exotic forms, layers of high-pressure ice that exist nowhere else in the solar system. Water changes under pressure. Its molecules rearrange, folding into new geometries, adapting to the gravity that holds them. And still it waits. Still it flows. You begin to think of water as more than substance, as story. Each molecule a letter, each current a line of verse. When water freezes, it pauses its tale. When it melts, it resumes. When it evaporates, it drifts to a new page. And always it seeks, not a destination, but a shape, a container, a space to inhabit. Water, after all, is defined not only by what it is, but by where it goes. On these moons, water flows beneath. It is the secret river beneath the crust, the voice behind the silence. Scientists have begun to listen, not with ears, but with instruments that read magnetic fields, gravitational shifts, spectral lines. These are tools designed to translate the language of water into data. But you, drifting here between thought and possibility, you hear it another way. You feel it. The way a musician feels vibration in the strings, the way a reader senses a story's rhythm beneath the words. You hear the hush of Europa's tides. You feel the spray of Enceladus as a sigh. You sense the slow murmur of Titan's deep, hidden sea. And as you listen, you begin to understand. Water is not only a place where life might begin, it is a teacher. It is the pattern itself. Water does not speak in syllables, but it speaks. Not in sentences, but in movement. A language written in currents, in droplets, in the soft erosion of time. You know this language already, though you may not always notice it. You've seen how water shapes a stone with patience, how it carries mountains into sand. On Earth, it dances in rivers and crashes in waves. But on the moons you visited, it speaks more quietly. Still, it speaks. You float now in this understanding, weightless among icy worlds, listening for that quiet voice. Beneath Europa's cracked shell, water moves unseen. It presses gently on the ice above, flows along hidden currents, laps against a crust that bends in response. Beneath Enceladus, water escapes in vaporous sighs, telling stories of warmth and salt and motion. Beneath Titan, it sleeps deeper still, held tight by frozen layers, but still it waits, ready to respond when the planet shifts its breath. Even on Callisto, quiet and forgotten, the hint of an ocean lies buried deep and still, and through them all, through every hidden sea, water is not silent. It whispers, it remembers. You recall how on Earth water holds memory. It carves canyons over millennia. It leaves behind traces, minerals, patterns, deltas, scars. Water is not passive. It chooses its path not with intention but with patience. It does not rush. It flows. And in that flowing it transforms everything it touches. On the icy moons, water wears new disguises. It is not always free. Sometimes it is trapped, sealed beneath kilometers of ice. Sometimes it is pressurized, squeezed into exotic forms, layers of high-pressure ice that exist nowhere else in the solar system. Water changes under pressure. Its molecules rearrange, folding into new geometries, adapting to the gravity that holds them. And still it waits. Still it flows. You begin to think of water as more than substance, as story. Each molecule a letter, each current a line of verse. When water freezes, it pauses its tale. When it melts, it resumes. When it evaporates, it drifts to a new page. And always it seeks, not a destination, but a shape, a container, a space to inhabit. Water, after all, is defined not only by what it is, but by where it goes. On these moons, water flows beneath. It is the secret river beneath the crust, the voice behind the silence. Scientists have begun to listen, not with ears, but with instruments that read magnetic fields, gravitational shifts, spectral lines. These are tools designed to translate the language of water into data. But you, drifting here between thought and possibility, you hear it another way. You feel it. The way a musician feels vibration in the strings, the way a reader senses a story's rhythm beneath the words. You hear the hush of Europa's tides. You feel the spray of Enceladus as a sigh. You sense the slow murmur of Titan's deep, hidden sea. And as you listen, you begin to understand. Water is not only a place where life might begin, it is a teacher. It is the pattern itself. Water teaches that life does not need perfection. It needs flexibility, adaptability, the ability to hold form while changing shape, to flow around obstacles, not stop, to gather, to rise, to fall, to repeat. This rhythm, rise and fall, melt and freeze, press and flow, is ancient, older than land, older than stars even. Water is not a visitor to the universe. It is part of its fabric. It formed in the earliest clouds of hydrogen and oxygen, long before planets cooled, long before moons turned. And so, when you find water on Europa or Ganymede, when you touch its breath on Enceladus or suspect its presence on Titan, you're not discovering something new. You're recognizing something old. You think now of how water behaves when it touches heat. It does not resist. It changes. It becomes steam. It becomes mist. On Earth, that cycle forms clouds, makes rain, fills rivers, feeds trees, quenches thirst. On other worlds, perhaps the pattern is slower, but still it lives. Perhaps geysers are its breath, frost its skin, salt its voice. You imagine a drop of water beneath the ice of Europa. Just one. It presses upward, warmed by the friction of the rock below. It rises through the sea, meets other droplets, grows into a current. It does not know where it goes, but it goes, and in its passage it touches rock. It carries minerals, it creates a chemical path, it invites molecules to meet, to bond, to build. Maybe over time those molecules become more than chemistry. Maybe they become memory. Maybe they begin to divide, to change, to dream. And perhaps, across that ocean, another drop makes the same journey, not as a twin, but as a reflection. Water does not act alone. It connects. It links. You think now of your own body. The water in your blood, your cells, your breath. You're more water than anything else. Your thoughts swim in it. Your heart pulses with it. Your tears carry salt like oceans. You're not just in orbit around water. You are water. And so, when you imagine the oceans of these distant moons, you're not imagining something alien. You're remembering something deep, something within. The language of water is not loud, it is not sharp or urgent. It moves slowly, echoes softly. It erodes mountains in silence. It digs caves in patience. It makes no demand, only invitation. And where it flows, life may follow. The moons speak in ice, in cracks, in vapour, but water is their common tongue. The one language shared across difference, across pressure, temperature, chemistry. Water is the translator, the bridge. You begin to wonder, if life does exist on these moons, will it speak through movement too? Through chemistry? Through currents? Will it, like water, take the shape of its world? And if we meet that life, someday, will we recognize its language not through sound, but through the soft, persistent rhythm of flow? You listen one last time beneath the crust of stars. You hear not speech but music, slow, liquid, eternal. And you drift now toward the next question, not about oceans, but about the ones who search them. Far from the warmth of home, beyond the orbits of the inner planets, beyond even certainty, something drifts. It does not breathe, it does not sleep, it does not dream, but it listens, it watches, it waits. A spacecraft, small by cosmic standards, yet enormous in hope, hums through the quiet, its antennas open like ears in the dark. This is how we search, not with flags or fire, but with silence. You float alongside these machines in thought, watching as they glide through deep space, their solar panels outstretched, their sensors humming in soft mathematical focus. They do not shout into the cosmos, they whisper, and then they listen for the reply. And often there is none. Not because there is nothing, but because silence is part of the answer. The probes, Voyager, Cassini, Galileo, New Horizons, and those still to come, do not know what they will find. They are built with patience, with questions folded into their circuitry. They are launched not with guarantees, but with curiosity. They are human hope turned into metal and signal, wrapped in the discipline of science, wrapped in wonder. And as they fly, they search. Not blindly, but humbly. They read light, dissecting it into spectra to see what molecules float through alien skies. They sniff for methane, for oxygen, for the thin trails of vapour, escaping through cracks in icy crusts. They feel gravity's pull, using its subtle changes to sense what lies beneath the surface. And always they send back data, strings of numbers, bits of radiation transformed into meaning. You imagine them now, orbiting Saturn, brushing through the mist of Enceladus, circling Europa with radar waves that reach deep into the ice. Each pass is quiet, each orbit is a question, and the answers come slowly, piece by patient piece. A flicker in the spectrum, a wobble in the crust, a molecule where none was expected. It is not unlike listening for a heartbeat in the middle of a storm. You must wait for the wind to still, for the waves to quiet, for the tiny rhythm to emerge. And sometimes it does. These machines are not just tools, they are extensions of our attention. They go where we cannot yet and look with a steadiness we admire. Their silence is not empty, it is focused. Every moment in orbit is an act of deep listening. You think of the engineers who built them, hands on keyboards, eyes on screens, years of careful testing for one brief moment of revelation. The planning is intricate, the timing precise. A miscalculation by seconds can send a probe hurtling off course by millions of miles. And yet we do it, again and again, because the silence out there invites us to listen. Some of the data they collect will not be understood for years. Some of it will be re-examined decades later, as new theories emerge, as new patterns are recognized. Even now, discoveries made by Voyager, launched before many of us were born, continue to unfold. Its golden record, tucked inside, carries sounds of Earth, greetings in dozens of languages, songs and sighs, not because we expect anyone to hear, but because hope too is worth sending. You drift now past Enceladus again, remembering the flybys of Cassini. Each pass through the plume was a risk. Ice could damage the craft, end the mission, but it went anyway. Instruments were exposed to the spray. Tiny detectors opened their mouths to the void and drank. And what they tasted was salt, organics, warmth. Not life, but the breath of something that might support it. The probes do not land often. Landing is hard. It requires precision and trust, and sometimes sacrifice. The Huygens lander fell gently through Titan's golden sky, touching down on pebbles of ice, recording sounds and images for just a few precious minutes. And in that brief silence, a world spoke. Not in words, but in landscape, in chemistry, in texture. Future missions are coming. Europa Clipper, JUICE. More names, more eyes, more listening. These will be better equipped. Sharper instruments, stronger ears, more refined questions. But they will still search in silence. They will still glide, float, wait. Because the universe does not yield its secrets to shouting, it answers the ones who wait. You begin to sense how the moons themselves respond. Not loudly, not even deliberately, but with cracks in the ice, with plumes, with a magnetic field that wobbles just so. Their silence is not denial, it is language. We just haven't fully learned to read it yet. You picture a radar beam bouncing back from beneath Europa's surface, a spectrometer passing sunlight through Titan's haze, a gravimeter noticing the faint tug of an ocean deep within Ganymede. None of this is loud. All of it is eloquent. To search in silence requires faith, not in miracles, but in process, in gathering every data point, every pixel, every vibration and building from those whispers, a story, a picture, a possible truth. And sometimes the silence is not because nothing is there. It is because we are not yet ready to hear it. You float farther now, imagining the future. A drill pierces Europa's ice. A robotic swimmer glides into its ocean. A sensor lights up, detecting methane, or something more. That moment may be far, it may be quiet. It may not happen in your lifetime, but the search is already underway, and the silence it listens to is filled with promise. You begin to realize it is not only the machines that are listening, it is us. Each mission, each map, each measurement, they change how we see, how we imagine, how we ask the next question. Silence is not the end of the story, it is the beginning, and what a story it might become. You turn now, slowly, gently, from the search to its purpose. Not just the tools, but the question itself. Not only what we hear, but what we hope to find. And somewhere, curled in the dark, warmed by a distant vent, perhaps something else is listening too. It is easy to imagine life as loud and as colour and motion, as eyes and wings, as voices calling out in forests and oceans. But life does not begin like that. It begins quietly, in hidden places. It begins not with sound, but with stillness. And sometimes it sleeps. You drift now, deep beneath the crust of a distant moon. The ice above is thick and ancient, silent as a sealed book. Light does not reach you here. There are no currents you can see, no shimmer to guide your way. But you feel something, a warmth not of fire but of presence. Not bright, not certain. Just the sense that in this darkness something could be. Perhaps there is life here, not thriving in the way we often imagine, but enduring. Slow, patient, not a bloom but a breath. You picture a single microbe floating through briny blackness. It does not hunt, it does not move quickly. It is smaller than a grain of sand, simpler than a leaf, and yet it lives. It consumes something, minerals perhaps, or chemicals drifting from a hydrothermal vent. It takes in, it transforms, it divides, and maybe it sleeps. Maybe in these oceans, beneath Europa, Enceladus, Ganymede, Titan, life exists in pauses, in long rests, curled like seeds waiting for a change in the tide, for a rise in temperature, for a chemical signal that says, now wake. Maybe it does not stir for centuries, but it does stir. We are not strangers to sleeping life. On Earth, microbes lie dormant in deserts for decades, then wake after a single rainfall. In polar ice, bacteria survive frozen, locked in time until they are thawed. Even seeds found in ancient tombs have been coaxed back to life. Life knows how to wait. You imagine a moon's ocean as a cradle of waiting, an environment stable, enclosed, protected from radiation and violent change. Warm enough, just enough, to sustain molecules, reactions, slow cycles. Time moves differently here. No seasons, no days, just the rhythm of tides deep under the ice. And what would such life look like? Not like anything we know, perhaps. No need for eyes in the dark. No need for lungs in an ocean rich with chemicals. Its skin, if it has any, might be tough against pressure. Its structure simple but resilient. Not made for flight or speed, but for surviving, for enduring, for simply being. There is beauty in that simplicity. There is elegance in life that doesn't rush. We are accustomed to measuring life by activity, by movement, by energy, by growth. But life at its root is a process, cycle, a moment of organization in a universe that tends toward chaos. It doesn't need to be fast to be real. It doesn't need to shine to exist. You think of deep-sea vents on Earth, where life clings to stone and feeds on minerals. No sunlight, no oxygen, and yet, life. Entire communities sustained by nothing more than heat and chemistry. We did not expect them. And so we look again at these moons and ask, if it happened here, why not there? You return to the idea of sleep. Not absence, but pause. Perhaps the conditions aren't always perfect. Perhaps the vents pulse irregularly. Perhaps nutrients are scarce. So life waits. It slows its metabolism, conserves its structure, becomes a potential rather than a presence. But it is there. We often speak of alien life as if it must be extraordinary, a revelation, but the first signs may be quiet, a pattern in molecules, a strange chemical ratio, an isotope out of balance. Life might announce itself not with a roar, but with a whisper in the data. You picture a future probe drifting through the ocean of Europa, sampling water, reading chemistry, and then something. A trace, a marker, a molecule where none should be, a pattern repeated, suggesting intention, a tiny piece of a story written in the language of life. Even that would be enough. Because what we seek is not certainty, it is possibility, the idea that we are not alone in carrying this strange, beautiful spark. The idea that life is not a fluke but a thread, one that weaves through time and space, through planets and moons, through oceans dark and deep. And even if we never find a living thing, the search itself teaches us something profound, that life, once thought rare, might be common, that Earth is not an exception, but a beginning, that the universe is not silent, but listening. You float farther into thought, deeper into the dark ocean of the unknown, and still the question presses softly against your mind. Could life sleep in the deep? It is not a question of proof, it is a question of trust. Trust in the processes that formed stars, planets, molecules. Trust that life is not delicate but adaptable, that it is not rare but patient, that it is not alien but simply waiting in a different form. In a world where everything familiar fades, the light, the landscape, the rules of biology, life might still be written in the same rhythm, flow, form, function, a dance too slow to see but there nonetheless, and you realize with a kind of calm awe that even without answers, you are comforted. Because the question itself is enough, because the silence of these moons does not feel empty, but full of thought, because water remembers, and warmth endures, and life, if it is here, is already telling its story in the dark. You drift now toward the surface again, slowly rising from the imagined sea. The crust returns above you, thick and pale. The stars begin to whisper through the ice, and the quiet remains. But something else is waiting. Not life this time, but memory. A feeling that these moons are more than worlds, that they are witnesses, that they've held their oceans not just as habitat, but as history. And somewhere in their slow turning they have recorded the passage of time. Call it a record, call it a dream. But the moons remember. Take Callisto, for instance. Its face old and untouched. Every crater remains. It has seen the beginning of the solar system. It remembers the great bombardment, the wild early days when collisions were constant, when worlds were still finding their orbits. It holds the echoes of that chaos in its skin, a testimony to time. And yet beneath that battered crust, a quiet ocean may still ripple, undisturbed, like a thought held close. Ganymede remembers a different rhythm, not one of scars but of layers. It carries a magnetic field generated deep within, a signal that says, I turn, I churn, I remember heat. The ridges on its surface are frozen tectonics, signs of movement, of pressure and release. It is a moon that has kept a beat across the ages, like a pulse beneath stone. Europa remembers tides. It flexes and groans under Jupiter's grip, its ice cracking with motion, revealing lines that cross continents. Those lines are not just fractures. They are the moon's voice. They whisper of an ocean below, pressing upward, always pushing, always listening. Each crack is a memory of strain, of warmth, of the sea trying to speak. And Enceladus, the dancer, remembers breath. Its plumes rising from tiger stripes near its south pole are its exhale. They release what lies below, spray it into space, tell us what it holds without speaking a word. Cassini listened. We listened. And in the salt and silica, in the organic molecules, we heard a story told in mist. Enceladus remembers what it is to give. Titan, veiled in golden haze, remembers what it is to imagine. Its lakes and rivers, though not of water, follow familiar paths. It wears an atmosphere like Earth, heavy and slow. Its dunes move with wind. Its clouds form and fall. Beneath its crust a water ocean waits, while above methane rains down like another kind of memory. One of possibilities, of strange reflections of our world. Each of these moons turns with ancient grace. They do not race. They do not shout. They persist. And in that persistence is remembrance. For nothing in the solar system stays truly still. Everything carries a trace of Ruhr. The moons turn slowly in the dark, each locked in a quiet rhythm around their planet. They do not forget. They cannot. For in their surfaces, in their layers, in the scars they carry and the oceans they cradle, there is memory. Not written in ink, not spoken in sound, but etched in ice, pressed into rock, encoded in magnetic fields and shifting tides. These moons are not merely places, they are records. You drift now between them, Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, Enceladus, Titan, and each feels like a page in a cosmic diary, worn at the edges, filled with silent notes. The craters are the punctuation, the ridges are the lines, the oceans below are the ink that still flows, waiting for more to be written. Attas come before, an orbit altered, a crust reshaped, a chemical fingerprint left behind. As you float among them, you begin to think differently, not in minutes or days, but in ages. These moons do not live by our clocks. Their time is written in ice layers, in orbital resonances, in tides that rise not every hour but every epoch. And somehow your thoughts begin to match their pace. Slower, deeper, reflective. You begin to see that memory, in this cosmic sense, is not just recollection. It is structure. The way Europa's cracks mirror the pull of Jupiter, that is memory. The way Titan's methane flows cycle through sky and ground, that is memory. The way Enceladus keeps spraying its ocean into the rings of Saturn, that is memory too. Motion becomes archive, chemistry becomes story. The moons remember not through minds, but through matter, and perhaps so do we. Your body carries the salt of oceans, the carbon of ancient stars, the heat of a childhood sun. Your cells turn over, your bones shift, but something inside remembers. Not in detail, but in rhythm. You're made of elements that have known other stars, other worlds. You're not separate from these moons. You're made of the same beginnings. And so, as you hover among them, listening to their silence, you begin to feel it. A shared memory, a kinship not of biology but of origin. These moons, and you, and the stars you see between them, all spun from the same dust. All carry echoes of the same explosion. All remember. It's humbling and it's comforting. Because even in the great stillness of space there is continuity. These moons remind you that time does not erase. It folds, it compresses, it writes new layers over the old, but the old remains. And in the movement of ice, in the chemistry of deep oceans, in the curve of orbits, the story continues. You wonder now what they've yet to see, what new missions might find, what secrets the ice still holds, what kind of life, if any, might be part of that memory. But even without answers, the knowing that these moons remember is enough. They carry what we forget. They endure what we overlook. They hold the silence that speaks across the stars. And as you begin to leave them, just for a while, you feel the imprint they've left behind, like a soft pressure in the chest, a slowing of breath, a deepening of thought. You will return to them in your mind again and again, the way we return to old songs or distant dreams. They are part of you now. Their stories, half written, still turn with them. You float quietly, letting that stillness settle. And then, from somewhere far away, not in space but in yourself, comes the softest call. It is time to return home. You're still now. Your body has softened, your thoughts have slowed. You lie in the quiet of your room, breath deep and steady, while beyond the walls, beyond the air, beyond the sky, the universe turns. It does not turn quickly, it does not rush. It moves with patience, with grace. The planets orbit the sun, the moons orbit the planets, the stars drift across unimaginable gulfs. And through it all you float gently in thought, like a leaf resting on a calm sea. You remember where you've been, the icy plains of Europa, the geysers of Enceladus, the golden haze of Titan. You have travelled far tonight, not with rockets or wings, but with imagination. And in those distant places you found not just mystery, but something soft and familiar. The moons, they keep turning, each one still spinning slowly, like a lullaby repeated just under your breath. Ganymede hums with its magnetic field. Enceladus sighs through its icy cracks. Titan breathes in mist. They do not stop, they do not sleep, but they rock gently in their orbits, circling the giants they call home, and in doing so, they sing. Not with sound, but with motion. Even now, even as you lie here wrapped in blankets and night, the seas beneath their surfaces are moving. Slow currents swirl in darkness. Heat rises from unseen vents, salts dissolve, molecules drift and twist and cling to one another in dances so small, so silent, they might be mistaken for nothing at all. But they are not nothing. They are possibility. They are the breath before life. And somewhere out there, something may be listening too. It may not have eyes, it may not have words, it may not even know what it is, but in the deep black water of a moon beneath layers of ice, it may float or feed or divide, not fast, not dramatic, but real, alive, existing like you do now, not for a reason, but because the universe has made room for it. And you're not separate from that universe. You're not merely observing it from afar. You're part of it, formed in it, folded from the same elements. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the carbon in your cells. All of it was born in stars. Long before you breathed your first breath, those stars lived, burned, died, and gave themselves to dust. That dust became planets. That dust became oceans. That dust became you. You are stardust and seawater. You are the memory of ancient fire and the shape of future tides. As you lie here now, on this quiet earth, you carry in your chest the same salt that fills Europa's sea, the same chemistry that may be swirling beneath Titan. You're small, yes, but never separate. Every heartbeat echoes the gravity that turns the moons. Every breath joins the atmosphere that cradles our pale blue dot. And in sleep, you drift. There is no urgency here, no destination, just the rhythm of your body matching the rhythm of the sky. You do not need answers. You do not need conclusions. You only need the wonder, the deep, peaceful knowing that the universe holds more than we can see, and that you're part of what it holds. The search for life out there is also the search for understanding in here, in your mind, in your soul, in the spaces where questions soften into dreams. You may never stand on the ice of Enceladus or see the clouds of Titan up close. You may never dive into Europa's ocean or listen to the creaks of Ganymede's shell. But you have travelled there already in thought, and thought, quiet, curious, wondering thought, is where all great journeys begin. The scientists, the engineers, the dreamers, they too once lay awake with wonder. They too gazed at stars and imagined what might be beneath the surface of a moon. They listened to silence. They built questions. They sent them out on silver ships, and some of those questions have not yet returned. They're still travelling, still listening, just like you. And now, as sleep folds around you, you let go of the need to understand everything. You do not need to solve the mystery of life tonight. You do not need to name every moon or measure every molecule. You simply rest. You surrender to the quiet gravity of rest, to the comfort that the universe does not need your attention to keep moving, to keep turning, to keep becoming. Everything will continue. The earth will spin. The moons will orbit. The oceans, even the alien ones, will flow. And you will sleep. You may dream. Perhaps of floating again through mist. Perhaps of reaching out a hand and touching the frozen crust of Europa, feeling the pulse of the ocean below. Or maybe you'll dream of something simpler. A ripple in the dark, a glow that isn't a star, a presence that says you are not alone. Even if you dream of nothing, you're held by gravity, by stardust, by silence. And in the silence there is meaning. You are here, and so is the universe. You fall asleep not under a ceiling, but beneath a sky. The same sky that the moons turn through. The same sky that reflects off methane lakes and icy rings and ancient craters. The same sky that has always been and always will be. You close your eyes and the stars remain. You close your eyes and the moons remember. You close your eyes and the universe keeps singing its lullaby.